Imagine crawling through total darkness, with ice-cold water rising up to your chin and only a few inches of breathable air above your head. Now imagine that thin stream of oxygen disappearing completely. That's exactly what happened during these 2 underground expeditions that turned into a nightmare. Get ready to discover stories that will chill you to the bone. December 1, 2011, Illinois. 4 experienced cavers stand at the entrance to a remote cave, ready to face their most perilous challenge. Chad McCain, the novice of the group for this particular system. Todd McCartney, 44, the veteran who had already explored these passages several times. Ralph Sawyer and Jason Kern complete this experienced team. Their goal? A flooded passage that has defied explorers for years, an underwater tunnel where they must crawl through icy water with their faces pressed against the rock ceiling. What makes this expedition terrifying is the tiny amount of headroom, only 6 to 10 inches between the water's surface and the rock. It's a deadly trap where panic can kill in seconds. McCartney arrives equipped with extra protection against the cold, a neoprene hood over his wetsuit. The others are wearing standard equipment, knowing that the cold will be their constant enemy. The team enters the underground system and makes its way to the flooded passage. When they reach their destination, reality hits them with full force. The tunnel stretches out before them, filled with dark, icy water that reflects their headlamps. The ceiling drops until there is only a narrow space to keep their heads above water. McCain volunteers to lead the exploration upstream, despite his relative inexperience in this cave. As soon as he enters the water, the cold hits him like a sledgehammer. The water is almost 4 feet deep, but the low ceiling forces him to crawl in an uncomfortable position. He holds his helmet in his hand to gain space, pressing his face against the rock. The headroom decreases to 15 centimeters, then even less, until McCain encounters a section where the ceiling is only 7 centimeters from the surface. McCain hesitates, studying the passage and assessing the risks. It is at this moment that McCartney makes a fatal decision. His extra protection against the cold gives him the confidence to go further. He decides to take the lead, leaving his bag with the group to reduce his profile in the water. Holding his helmet in front of him for protection, McCartney passes McCain and continues upstream. The water is freezing, but his neoprene suit provides sufficient insulation. He presses his nose against the ceiling, breathing in a minimal space as he sinks deeper into uncharted territory. The feeling is claustrophobic and terrifying. McCartney is literally swimming in an aquatic tunnel with barely enough air to breathe. Every movement must be deliberate and controlled. Panic would be fatal in seconds. McCartney continues 12 meters beyond McCain's furthest point, entering virgin territory. The passage winds with the ceiling varying from 7 to 10 inches above the surface. He is now fully committed, too far from safety to turn back quickly. Then the nightmare scenario unfolds. Rounding a bend, McCartney discovers that the passage does not continue straight ahead. He plunges abruptly downward. The ceiling, which was barely manageable at 7 inches, drops even lower while the water level remains the same. In the bend, there is virtually no airspace left. McCartney finds himself facing a completely flooded tube with no room for his head above the surface. He tries to back up, but the confined space makes it almost impossible to quickly reverse direction. Panic sets in when he realizes he is trapped in a flooded section with no air pockets. His lungs burn as he holds his breath, desperately searching for a way forward or backward. The others hear the first sounds of distress from around the bend. McCartney begins kicking and thrashing in the water, his movements becoming increasingly desperate. At first, the team thinks he may have found a section with more headroom and is navigating a difficult passage. But the thrashing continues, becoming more alarming. McCartney's light is visible from the bend, but his movements are clearly those of someone in serious trouble. The controlled gestures of an experienced caver have been replaced by the frantic struggles of someone fighting for his life. McCain calls out to McCartney, but there is no response. The thrashing becomes more violent, followed by periods of worrying silence. McCain swims back up the current as fast as he can in the confined space, calling out to his friend. When McCartney's light suddenly appears, McCain's worst fears are confirmed. McCartney is clearly in trouble, his movements uncontrolled and desperate. Then McCain watches in horror as McCartney goes under the water and does not resurface. When he finally surfaces, he is floating face down against the wall, completely motionless. McCain and Sawyer rush over, but the confined space makes rescue attempts incredibly difficult. In this very small airspace with cold water and limited room to maneuver, even reaching McCartney is a challenge. Sawyer, overwhelmed by the situation and the confined space, panics momentarily. He goes underwater, fighting the fear and claustrophobia that threaten to claim another victim. When he resurfaces in a small pocket of air, he has lost his helmet and light, cutting his face on the sharp rock wall. McCain knows that time is critical. McCartney has been underwater for precious seconds, and brain damage can occur quickly without oxygen. McCain finally reaches McCartney after about 45 seconds that seem like hours. He grabs the unconscious man and begins dragging him downstream toward Kern, fighting the current and the confined space. The closest place to get McCartney completely out of the water is still more than 600 feet away. McCain finds a section with only a foot of water and more than a foot of headroom, enough to begin emergency treatment. When they turn McCartney over, his condition is terrifying. His eyes are glassy and covered in mud, showing no signs of consciousness. McCain immediately begins CPR, working in cramped conditions to restart his friend's breathing and heart. Sawyer and Kern join the effort, working together to keep McCartney's head above water while administering artificial respiration. The next few minutes are the longest of their lives. After 2 to 3 minutes that feel like hours, McCartney suddenly regains consciousness. The relief is immense, but they know they are not out of the woods yet. They move him another 30 feet downstream to a muddy bank where he can sit and recover. Now they face new challenges. They had to get McCartney out of the cave quickly, but with very few light sources remaining. The return journey was a nightmare of endurance and determination. They had to navigate a 91-meter ramp that explorers nicknamed the bathtub because it contained water with only 15 centimeters of headroom. McCain finds an innovative solution to get McCartney through the ramping. He attaches 2 waterproof floating bags to his waist, creating a makeshift flotation device. McCartney can rest his head and chest on the bags, while McCain pulls him through the section. Finally, 6 hours after entering the cave and 3.5 hours after the accident, the 4 men emerge into the winter air. McCartney is immediately taken to the hospital, where he spends 4 days recovering from his ordeal.